years later, I mean, this was actually just a few years ago, which was 18 or so years after I left the country, I started all at once hearing from a bunch of my former students. So, you know, I'd gone years without hearing from many of them. And then all of a sudden, you know, I get an email from one saying, oh, you know, when you used to do those demonstrations, because that's one thing I did in physics, is I would demonstrate, here's how a magnet works, here's this, here's that. And I didn't think that much of it, you know. It seemed like an obvious thing to do for physics. And one of them said, well, one time you did this demonstration on magnets, and, which I don't remember that. But anyway, and he said, and that inspired me to make a board game using magnets, and now I've sold that board game to Walmart. And it was amazing, you know. I mean, I don't remember that lesson. You know, I think you were saying this earlier, that you just never know where things will lead.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was neat. That was neat. And then there was another one who, you know, remembered me well, and he had his own little factory making shear butter in Ghana. And then another one was getting a master's in public health at a university in Britain. I can't remember which one. And then another one who was probably my strongest student in science, although I had some of these other guys are pretty sharp too, but he was probably the sharpest one. And he, actually, this is a funny story. He said, oh, hi, master, this is Ansang Kojo, and now I'm getting a PhD at University of Alberta in Canada. Joseph Ansang, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. Wow, it's been a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
I did recognize you. I wasn't sure I would.
I did recognize you as well.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Camera in hand, right? I gotta get the camera in hand.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Nice to see you. Brian, long time no see.
Yeah, very long time.
What's that where you want?
We needed Brian. I mean, Brian was, I would say, our biggest asset, because he came into the classroom with some level of dedication that we never saw before. You know, he was more positive. Brian was preparing us to succeed. He was preparing us to pass.
I'll add something to that, something interesting.
You know, he would go heaven and earth to get examples to make us really understand what he was teaching us. And that really meant a lot to me. And I think that if I have my way, I'll take him back to Africa.
It's not going. You should go back to Africa.
Oh yeah, I will. Africa needs us. Yes, I will, because we Africa really needs us. You know, we have this issue of brain drain we keep talking about all the time. Like doctors like him who leave the country and they never come back. I think my belief is that if Brian would fly 6,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean just to teach us, if I understand it, why wouldn't I be willing to stay home to help my own world develop?
Thinking about too is you all knew each other. What's it been now? Almost 20 years, 18 years.
About 20, yeah.
And you still are reconnecting rather than been there, done that. Now I'll go my way and forget the people back there. But now you're a good example of where you didn't forget each other, and also back home I hear that, but each other. So I'd like you got in touch or connected through high tech with the internet, but now this is different than that. This is where you're actually seeing each other. What can you say about the value of that, of to actually get together again rather than goodbye, I knew you back then?
Yeah.
What has this been like for you all getting together now?
Yeah.
For me, it means a lot. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to say thank you to Brian. In a way, it makes us into one big family.
In early June, I received an email from Sally Davenport, who was a Peace Corps volunteer in the same group that I was in. And so in early June, she sent me an email that she had been working with a Tanzanian from the University of Arizona. Somehow they finally figured out that Tellis had been at the school where I taught as a Peace Corps volunteer. And there was a second American, Mario Salerno, who another Peace Corps volunteer, and the two of us taught there. And Tellis said, oh, he remembered us very clearly. And a few days later, she said, well, indeed, Tellis has told me that his full name is Telesfori. And then when he was at Sumve, his name was Telesfori Raphael. And then I realized that this Tellis in Tucson was exactly this Telesfori that I remembered from 1964 and 1965. And Sally went on to say, he still has that curiosity. He's always asking questions. He's always wondering about how to make things better. And she described Tellis today exactly as I remembered Telesfori 45 and 46 years ago. It was always kind and polite and soft-spoken, but had this ability to press us in no way that was mean at all, but he wanted to know things. And so that's why I still, 45 years later, I was able to translate Tellis into possibly Telesfori, and it turned out that's who it was. But again, I think all returned volunteers, Peace Corps volunteers, will have those 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 people that they really remember, even if it's after, in my case, 45 years. And he was certainly one of those people.
Hi, I'm Telesfori Machibia. I come from Mwanza in Tanzania, and Mwalimu is the word for teacher, so I'm going to refer to my teachers as the title we normally use as Mwalimu. So Mwalimu Manchester and Mwalimu Salerno were my Peace Corps teachers from 1964 to 1965.
Okay. I want, and where I'm coming from now is Peace Corps volunteers came and they were with you way back when. But now I think it's important to have more of an ongoing thing rather than we saw you, we've been there, now we're going to do something else, to have more of a connection. And so I'm curious, now with the internet, we're able through email to have connection, but even more than that, I think this face-to-face kind of connection is important. It fills out the picture more. So I'm curious your response to that, or thoughts about that. How has this been?
I think, but yes, you are very right. I think there is this need of saying it's not just the 2 years that you interacted with, or we interacted with these people. It's the continuation. And I think also it should go beyond that, and I know little about President Kennedy's ideas. It was not just for the 2 years experience, it was building the relationship between nations. And if you don't have a follow-up, other than just sending more and more and more Peace Corps without having to say, okay, these were here, what have they continued to interact, and what else have they continued to come back, for example, even just to visit the areas they have been. So you're right, I think there is that need.
And how has this experience been for you now with Steve and Marriott?
Oh, wonderful. Yesterday we had to be told to go to bed.
I wanted to say one thing that, I didn't know anything really much about Africa. I didn't even know where Tanzania was. And people would say afterwards when I came back, how could you go to Africa? There are jungles there and there are wild animals and whatever. And I said, yeah, but what you don't know about are the people. That was the surprise, I suppose, not knowing anything, was that the people were so friendly, such wonderful people. We're all people, and they're wonderful people. I don't know what we thought we were getting into, but that's tremendous. And Africa stays with you. If you have been living in Tanzania, Tanzania stays with you. You don't get it out of your system. There's a love there. You can ask any returned Peace Corps volunteer that I know. They love Tanzania. They would go there at any time. It is a lifelong thing from that point of view. And now the opportunities are there to make that more real.
To close then, you think, Colleen? Very good, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, got it. Oh, wow. I'm glad we didn't see them.
It happens to me that I just want to see Jim. I just remember Jim. I don't know why. 4 to 5 years ago.
Definitely.
I think I will be very happy. I will be too happy if I can see Jim face to face.
I think so too, yes.
If God bless.
It's really all about Anthony. So this is kind of a unique opportunity, I think. I mean, this is some memories that I've held for 40 some years, and I have really good feelings about that, and I really good feelings about him as a person.
Okay. How are you too? Okay, thanks. Yeah. How was your...
Many years, huh?
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. After 45 years.
I think so, yeah.
Anton, it seemed like he didn't believe that one day he's going to meet Jim. So remembrance for me is kind of special thing, and the people who remember us, for me I consider them that they're special kind of people.